Hi, everyone, and my name is Dr. Dion Klein. In this webinar, we're going to look at finding the right business to start for you. That's a little bit about me. I invite you to go to LinkedIn, search my name, and please connect with me. I'd love to continue the conversation after this webinar. So a lot of people say, have shared with me, it'd be nice to have my own business. And I go, why don't you? And they give a number of different excuses. So I want you to just take a moment and think about what's holding you back from starting a business. Is it lack of financial resources? Because you don't need much money. Actually, you don't need almost any money to start a business, at least some of them. Is it the concern about a potential for financial loss? It might be very real, especially if you have a family and a lot of expenses. Is it an aspect of your career, or maybe a lack of secure income? Is it a lack of self-confidence? Maybe family pressures, health, stress, or fear of long hours? Maybe it's the actual risk itself. Maybe it's the belief that you don't have what it takes. I believe you do. And hopefully as we go through this, by the end of the webinar, you'll have a little bit more confidence that you can at least take the plunge and investigate the options that you have ahead of you. So starting your small business, here's just some things to consider. And we're really going to focus on really the first three. The first one is to discover the skills you already have. What skills do you have that other people need? I'm sure many of you watching this webinar or this video, you all have many skills that other people need. Maybe it's typing, proofreading, editing, maybe doing a website, social media, Facebook, maybe design, taking photos, cleaning. The world's your oyster with regards to this. The skill that you have, I'm sure that somewhere along the line, somebody else lacks that skill, and they're looking for somebody to do exactly what you can do. The second one is generating that business idea based on the existing skills. Now, I know when I started my business, my first business, I was looking at what I could do, and I think at the time I was doing a bit of massage, I was doing personal training, I was doing some desktop publishing back in the early 80s when desktop publishing was really just coming about. And I was just looking at all these various skills that I had that other people didn't. And then I offered those skills to these people, obviously for some money to do it. Even sometimes I would do it for free just to get my own skills up and running. And then you can model that idea after a similar business. Now today, there's really no need to reinvent the wheel. You can Google a potential business idea, you can find other businesses around the world that are doing it well, and you can model off them. There's other resources out there. I think it's called the Entrepreneur Group, or it's basically this company. You can buy a whole manual that tells you how to start a personal training business or how to start your online information business. They have so many guides, and it's not very expensive. So if you're really not quite sure and you feel that you need some assistance, you can just Google how to start whatever business you want. And I think their resources cost maybe $299 US. But once again, just Google it and you can find that information. And then once you find that model company and you kind of figure out the business that you want to do, then you can test the sales potential via revenue modeling. And as I said, we won't go into that in this webinar. I go over that in detail in our small business and micro business classes. Design a plan, your plan of attack. Building a team, to have any successful business, you really, really do need a team. And that's how you can leverage off of their skills, and it just becomes so much better. I know that when I have a great team behind me, the business just does really, really well. And not necessarily because of me, but really because of them and what they bring to the business itself. And then the last thing is developing those marketing and sales strategies. Marketing is very, very important. And I've done a webinar earlier in regards to looking at some low cost and no cost marketing strategies that I encourage you to have a look at on our site. So what is your skill set? I teach students and in helping them develop their resume. And one of the first exercises we do is I get them to look at what they have done. Now, some of these students are undergrads. They haven't had much work history. So we go back to what do they do for their hobby? What have they done in part-time work? And we really extract those micro skills that they do so they can show to a potential employer that they do have something that they can build from. Now, some of you who are well seasoned, having many jobs under your belt, you can look at what were your job responsibilities and any specific tasks that were associated with those responsibilities. What are some other tasks that you do at your job even though they're not your primary responsibility? What are some industries or markets that you have experience in? What are some tasks that you do at home? Maybe you're a great organizer. That's a huge one. Many people need their lives organized. Maybe you're a great cook, a cleaner, lawn, you maintain your lawns, okay? Any of these tasks can be transformed into a business. Activities that you do in your spare time, photography, scrapbooking, painting, right? Activities you would choose to do in your spare time. So maybe you want to go and learn some skill, and it might be basic, but remember, even if you have a little bit of knowledge, you have a lot more than some others that have absolutely no knowledge at all. Any task others often ask you to help out with. Some of you might be really, really stuck and going, I have no idea what I'm good at. I found the best thing to do is ask your close friends, ask your colleagues, and just say, what do you think I'm really good at? And they'll tell you, because you might come to top of mind with them whenever they have a problem to solve. Maybe you are a really good problem solver as well. That might be one of your skills. What are some tasks you're good at and might take for granted? I know myself that over the years, like just even as an educator and writing curriculum, I sometimes take that for granted, and people will have to remind me of those skills that I just go, well, that's what I normally do. That's just part of the plan. And they go, well, that's a real skill that you don't have. And that might be the same for you. I'm sure many of you just take some of your skills for granted because it just comes so naturally that you don't even see it as a skill. It's just part of who you are. Those skills are gold in the eyes of others that really need something like that to solve their problem. So remember, strengthen your strengths and hire your weaknesses. This is one of the really challenges for people that start their own business. They try to do everything themselves. And their response is, yeah, but I don't have any money to hire anybody. Here's a really valuable secret. Find students. Find students in high school, university, right? These students are hungry to increase their experience, to increase their portfolio. I'll tell you, some of these high school kids, their knowledge of technology is way beyond I will probably even understand. And they're always looking for projects, and they're very giving. And even if you throw a little bit of money to them, they'll appreciate it. Many of the students that I know that go to university as well, they have to do real world or industry projects, and that becomes really good. Who knows? You may not be able to pay them a wage now, but in 6 months' time, after they do your marketing research report or maybe your website or design a logo, you might have the money to bring them on part-time, maybe even full-time. So really look at that. A key one is everybody tries to do their books instead of hiring a bookkeeper. And I'm guilty of that myself at times. And that can be so time-consuming. Once again, find a student who's studying accounting that they want to get some real experience because they haven't had so far, and ask them to, input some information into MyOb or Xero, whatever accounting platform that you use, and write reports for you. okay, and interpret them as well if that's not your strength. So where do you find information on these businesses? Everywhere, right? Those are just a few listings of where to find it. But as I said, you can find information everywhere. And with the power of the internet today, literally the world is at your fingertips, all right? Books, old books, it's funny. I always say there's no new ideas. Now, the only new ideas that are coming about are those that are triggered by the new technologies that are coming about. Many times it's not the technology that is the industry, it's the technology that is enabling an already existing industry or business. So what you can do is look at an old business model and then ask yourself, well, how can I use this technology to change this business, to make it more efficient, to make it faster, to make it cheaper, to make it global? That might be another thing to look at. So the methods of creating information, once again, many different ways that are listed on that slide. You can get information from other organizations, professional organizations, go out networking, ask people, talk to people, put a post on Facebook, get other people's opinions. There's so many ways today, due to the internet, that we can get very easy access to this information and collect it. And then once we collect it, we can put it into a database, an Excel file, even a Word document to help put our plan together. There's various types of small businesses. The most dominant business in the world today is a service-based industry. Pretty much every country I know of, it's all services. 2/3 of small business are service-based industries. It's the greatest rate of both. It's also the easiest one to start. So for example, if I am a graphic designer and I go, I'm just going to start my own graphic design business, there's many platforms you could just put your skills up to ask, hey, if anybody needs a logo done, please let me know. Fiverr, Guru, Freelancer, heaps of them, Airtasker. So these service-based businesses are very, very easy to start with literally no money, right? An example of that would look at your skill, post on Facebook, I'm offering my services, who needs help? And you might get your first client right from there, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. Retailing is 1/5 of small business. Retailing's in the brick and mortar situation is taking a real hit due to the likes of Amazon and all these other online stores because you don't need any overhead. So even though you go, but I love retail, I love to have my own little shop, just be careful of doing that. I think it might be better for you if you do want to do something in retail, you're better off at finding one of your local markets. We have plenty of them here on the Gold Coast, and find out how much it costs to have a stall on usually either Saturday or Sunday mornings, sometimes Friday nights. And you can start your retail with that kind of low overhead because it's easy to work your profit and loss of was having that market stall worthwhile versus if you go, I really want to have a retail shop on a street or even in a mall, you're going to be required to pay that monthly rent whether you make sales or not. And then you also have to think about who's going to run the shop when you may not be able to, if you came down with a cold or something. So retailing, it's 1/5 of small business. There's still great opportunity online with retailing, I believe. You just need to be aware of the overhead and the costs involved with that. Manufacturing, dominated by larger firms, and especially overseas. Here in Australia, manufacturing is quite expensive due to our high wage rates. So once again, you need to look at this. Now, in saying that, with the advent of 3D printing, or what they call additive technology or additive manufacturing or advanced manufacturing, you could go into that using a bunch of 3D printers. So that is something that if you're into that stuff, I would definitely encourage you to Google it and explore those business opportunities that are there. And then wholesaling is the smallest segment, and that's basically your wholesaler getting the products from the manufacturer to where then you might get your businesses to buy from you. So that whole supply chain is really being challenged with technology and the different business models that are coming about. But those are your basic, your four basic small businesses. As I said, the most popular being service-based, followed by usually retailing. So generating ideas for your business. Once again, heaps of information out there. There's many magazines, how to start your own business, entrepreneur magazines, Fortune, success magazines. There's working from home. There's heaps. And then, of course, the internet. One of the ways that you can come up with an idea for your business is thinking about what are people's pain. All right. What is one of the biggest challenges that people are going to have? If it's in health, it might be movement or arthritis or, sinuses, allergies, menstrual cramps, whatever. Okay. It might be finance. Obviously finance is a really big challenge for many people. So maybe you have a way to help people get extra money or maybe budget their money better. Maybe some of your pain is in real estate. Maybe you don't know what to do. You've just sold your house and now you don't know how to invest the money the next round. The market opportunity, what's missing? Okay. And that comes back to your market research. Now, the thing is that you might find that it's not missing in, say, America, but it might be missing here in Australia. So you can explore those opportunities here to see, well, is there a market here? Can I bring it over from the States or from any other country to create that market and create that buzz? What other trends are happening? There's some fantastic websites out there all about trends. Find out what's trending, and then go back to, well, is that trend occurring here in Australia or wherever country that you're listening from? And can I fill that gap? Is there a demand? Sometimes you need to be careful about jumping into the game too early. I've been notorious for doing that, where I'm ready to do the market, but the market isn't ready to purchase it. And that becomes a very expensive exercise as well. What are whispers? Whispers are those silent opportunities that, people are talking about it, but it's not quite coming to fruition. And that's a really great time to jump on the opportunity. Once again, timing is everything on that. The parallel worlds, I've, in a sense, talked about that a little bit. What's happening in the US, but it's not here yet. It may be happening in a particular city, and it hasn't hit your city yet, right? Every city has its cycle. Every country has its cycles as well, all right? So you just got to know that, once again, coming back to that timing. Traditional and new media, once again, I said earlier, is looking at where the technology is going, where it is now and where it's going. Pop culture, research reports, business listings, conferences and trade shows give you a lot of great insight, especially if you're overseas and they have to have a conference or a trade show, and you go to that and you see something, well, man, I haven't seen this in your home country. That gives you some insight as well. And then existing customers, if they already have a business, you might not want to start your own business, but maybe you might have people who are already looking to sell their business or maybe add on. Those could be some ideas for your business as well. Your business must fit your values. Otherwise, the integrity of your business as well as your own integrity will be compromised. So, I get approached by, a few multi-level marketing companies, and I have nothing against multi-level marketing at all. I know people who have made some really good money from it. They're very passionate. They're great salespeople. But for myself, I've just found that just hasn't really worked for me. And many times it's because that the product that these people present to me, I don't necessarily believe in. And I may believe in the concept, if it's a health product, and I 100% believe in health. But for my own personal integrity, if I don't see me using it on a regular basis, I just have a struggle to bring it on board and to sell it to other people. So you need to really look at this. Is the business that you're going to run, is it congruent with your values? Because if it's not, it's going to be quite difficult to make that business a success. I'm not saying it won't be. I just know people who have gone into a business and done it without it really aligning with their values. It wound up as failure for them. So assessing the commercial feasibility about it. So here's the difference between a hobby and a business. Okay, I've seen many people go, oh, I love doing this as their hobby, and then they go into it as their business. I'm not saying you can't do that. The challenge is that you have to be very aware that when you do it as a hobby, that your passion, your love is there. If you're going to turn it into a business, you have to go back to, well, what's my revenue model, and making sure that you're not giving away stuff as you would do maybe in your hobby. And when you run it as a business, you have to make sure that you're going to be bringing in more money than you're putting out. So let's look at the opportunity. So the opportunity is going, well, what's the potential demand? Right? Is there really demand for the hobby that you're doing? So let's say you make jewelry, right? Is there potential demand? Oh, as far as I can remember, and I'm sure it's going to be in the future, mostly women love jewelry. They're always buying jewelry and everything, and people will buy jewelry as gifts. So there's always a potential demand. Market acceptance, 100%. People accept. Jewelry is fantastic, and even handmade jewelry is getting more, more prominent. When I go to the markets, there's at least, 3 or 4 stalls that have somebody displaying their jewelry. The competitive position. This is where, like, keeping on with that jewelry example, this is where it could get quite challenging, because there's a lot of people out there selling jewelry. If you go to Etsy, there's many artists there that are selling jewelry. So that can be a very competitive area. So looking at those 3, going, okay, well, I have the potential demand. There is market acceptance. Where am I at according to my competition? What's the risk? What are the external risks? And what's the establishment risks? So the external risks is just what we spoke about, the competition. Right? That's a huge external risk. There might be others. If you're going to start a business, you might have external risks that might be compliance, maybe government. It might be overseas tax, customs. So there's various risks that are there. Many of your external risks will be either political, economical. What happens if there's a downturn in consumer confidence? Will people want to buy your product? Social, cultural risks, technological risks as well. Are you getting ready to go into an area, but the technology is soon going to be outdated? Environmental risks. Are you going into something that people would question the environmental impact on that? Right? So there's the risk. The establishment risks. I mentioned before, like if you wanted to go into retail, well, the establishment risks, you can go basically 3 routes. You can do it online from home. You can do a market stall maybe every weekend, which is a little bit of a bigger risk because you're outlaying money and you're hoping that you're going to sell enough to cover the costs of that stall. Or the establishment risks of going, well, I'm going to go into a 3-year lease and hope that it just keeps working. So you need to look at that risk. What's the complexity of the feasibility? So what's your expertise? Do you have expertise in the area? So going back to that jewelry, yes, you have expertise. You've been doing it for a long time. Maybe you even have a degree in fashion, right? Your expertise is there. What about the resources? Do you have access to the materials? So those 2 things. If you don't have the expertise, and it is a highly complex business thing, you may need to bring on a business partner, which then becomes another risk as well. And then looking at, do I have the resources, or can I access the resources to make this hobby turn into a business? And all those questions and the answers that you get to those questions will give you an indication on that commercial feasibility. One of the, even with the complexity of the expertise, I've seen people, it's part of that is mindset, which is probably even a risk in itself, is what's your mindset of, are you going in it to actually make it for money? And I've seen many people try to turn their hobby into a business, and because they didn't do that shift where it was now a business, it was still probably a hobby of theirs, but because they didn't do the figures to make it commercially viable, it didn't really go ahead. Model companies. I stated earlier about establishing that model company. Don't reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of information out there that you can find these model companies and look at, well, how do they penetrate the market? Look at when they began too, because if they began 20 years ago, the way of penetrating the market was probably totally different than how they would penetrate the market today if they were starting out. How do they create a brand image? Who are their customers? How are they reaching them? Right? Are they doing it by email? Do they have a brick and mortar? Do they do it by offline marketing? What products are they selling, and which ones are they selling the most of? Do they work on employee or contractor basis? What is their sales process? Once again, is it online? Do they have a business development manager? Do they start it out by telemarketing? Do they buy a list? You need to look at all these things, because then you can, if you go, wow, that's actually working, just do what they do, And like I said, you can look at companies all around the world of the business processes of how they do things. Who are the leaders in your area, in your industry? What's their philosophy? Listen to them to see where they're going to go. Look at those thought leaders. Many of these thought leaders you can find video on YouTube or even through LinkedIn or just Googling. And how are they making money? Where is their money? I listened to an entrepreneur one time, and I think they were selling something in the photocopying industry. Maybe they're selling copiers. And as he was discussing, he said, the money wasn't necessarily in the copiers, but it was in the services around that also complemented that part of the business. So you might find out that it's not the widget that they're making money from, but it's all those services around it to support the widget where they're making the money in the consulting. There really is no reason at all to reinvent the wheel. So in finishing, just think about this, right? A person with skills who has the right motivation, and we didn't really touch upon that, but you have to also look at, well, why do you want to start your own business? So a person with skills who has the right motivation with a good idea and a real opportunity in the right place at the right time, properly resourced, will succeed in business. Thank you very much for your time and attention today, and I'm willing to take questions afterwards. Thanks very much.